Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me again. My name is Will Critchlow, founder and CEO at SearchPilot, and I'm joined today by Rodney Perez, who's the global SEO manager at Wayfair. He's actually based in Berlin and joining us from a very wintry scene today with snow falling. And we are going to be talking about all kinds of things SEO testing, but particularly focusing in on something that is a kind of core part of Rodney and his team's remit, which is coming up with test ideas. And this is something that we've thought a lot about at SearchPilot and is one of the very hardest parts of an SEO testing program. So I'm really looking forward to picking Rodney's brain and hearing about the lessons that he and his team have learned about where good ideas come from, what looks like a good idea, how you validate them, and so forth. So thank you for joining me, Rodney.
Thanks, Will. Excited to join. And yeah, let's get started.
Yeah, so where I thought we'd kick off is I'd love to just hear a little bit about the background. So what does the team structure look like, and who do you collaborate with around the business?
Yeah, so we have a team of analysts, and that's mostly where test ideation is done. We have a data analyst as well, who helps us, design the tests, write the test results, etc. And we collaborate, of course, very closely with our product team, which is also SEO. But also we collaborate, company-wide. So our team basically takes care of what we need to take care of, just SEO, of course. But we take ideas from wherever we can, and try to educate our fellow coworkers. So that SEO is also, part of the big strategy at Wayfair.
Yeah, and so tell me a bit more about that. Where good ideas come from? How do you think about that within the SEO team? But then I'm particularly very interested in how you kind of collect those ideas from around the business.
Yeah, it sounds good. So I'm going to start with like an overarching high level. It's a statement about this, and I think we spoke about this before. You need to make sure that you have a great team. And, of course, it's not always amazing. It's not always, possible to just start from scratch and start getting the right people for the team. So in that case, you need to educate them, if need be, or mentor. But in any case, what I was trying to say is you need a team who, or individuals in the team who are curious. You need curiosity. You need people who are really able to recognize patterns. We're all doing our daily, work. We're just analyzing all the time, looking at the SERPs, looking at our own website, speaking with engineering, etc. So it's extremely important for us to keep that the curiosity levels and the pattern recognition, on all the time. So that's the first thing. And then after that, like I said, there's our daily analysis. That's basically what provides the first step in test ideation. We just continuously looking at how our site is performing, how our competitors are performing, etc., what they're doing, what we're doing, what we're not doing. And that would be the first step, right? Just from within, what opportunities do we have? What opportunities have we had in the past and have not carried out? What opportunities have we missed, right? So that's the one thing. The other thing is that we also, in our product team as well, of course, right? They're the engineers, basically just taking care of everything and executing many of the initiatives that we test. So we constantly have, sessions where we discuss any ideas. Especially, when it comes to planning cycles, which we do every 6 months. That's when we start really working on it. But there's also, of course, other teams, and being alert to the changes that they're making and to the initiatives that they're trying to execute. And you'll always get ideas from them as well. And of course, there's when we do the cycle planning, we sit together and we discuss those ideas, right? So it's basically like a round table of let's just discuss. It's kind of a creative process. What have you guys been doing? What are we doing? And what can we be doing together? And what can we be learning from each other? And that's more or less where these ideas come from.
So many things to dive into. So, but it's interesting that you talk about, it sounds like there are some things that bubble up from curiosity and pattern recognition, right? You notice a competitor doing something, or you spot an opportunity on your website. And then other times there's more of a deliberate exploration process. It sounds like, this kind of doing some data analysis, going and looking very specifically for specific things. Out of that comes a whole load of ideas, undoubtedly. You talked about the sitting together. How do you structure that? Are you collecting these ideas in a backlog, in a queue? Are you pre-filtering, or you just literally get to the room and do it all live?
Well, so if we begin by what the team does, right? When the ideas come from within, we do document all the ideas that we have. That's of course. That would be the best case scenario, that whenever we have an idea, we just go and I'm just going to document this, and we have a file for that. And it depends, right? So when we have, let's say, cross-functional meetings with other teams, etc., where we share our ideas, of course, we can bring that backlog of ideas that we have. But we also leave room for improvisation and like new ideas, because interacting with other people, bouncing ideas off each other, new things may come up, and so that we leave the door open for that as well. So I would say it's a good combination of both, bringing ideas and letting ideas be born, basically, during those meetings. Yeah,
and so you talk about documenting them, and that's this process of having a little bit of structure around it. So taking it from just, I guess, an idea to a hypothesis that you could discuss, argue about, defend. What makes a good hypothesis?
Right. So a good hypothesis, we basically use the if, then, because framework methodology, basically, which is very simple, right? We as human beings, we're hypothesizing all the time, right? When you cross the street, you look at pedestrian lights, you go like, well, if I cross right now, it's red, and a car is coming, maybe I will, something will happen to me because, right? So this is basically what we do. So during, let's say, when we document these ideas, we just write a rough, say, hypothesis. Say, what we think this is going to happen if we do this because of this, and that's what we do basically. And then once we get to the actual, say, selection process, as we all sit together as a team, try to measure these objectively using the RISE methodology, right? What's going to be the impact, the effort of this initiative, and then we score them that way to have an objective value, and that's how they begin. And then after that, of course, we do our test plans and briefs, and that's where we write our actual hypothesis. Again, if, let's say, in terms of SEO, if we change this or if we add this type of copy to the page, then the main KPI will increase by that much percent, because we think that search bots will benefit, or let's say we think that users actually will benefit from this change, and search bots will consider that as a good change.
Yeah. And how granular are you getting with this, like, estimation before building these tests? So are you just bucketing into low, medium, high effort, or are you getting more specific than that and kind of saying this is going to be 30 hours of an engineer's time, or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so for the RISE methodology, when we do the RISE methodology, it's not extremely granular. It's just basically to help us understand the value of the project, and the value of the projects against each other as well. So we don't, it would be extremely it would take a lot of time to just go ahead and, this is going to be exactly 30 hours. And this is where the mentoring really becomes important, because, of course, your analyst will probably think, how much time do I have to invest in this particular thing at this moment? But it basically, doing the RISE methodology, you already have the framework. You just basically have to open or select a drop down menu and select the effort that you think this will have. Is it SML, right? XL, the type of impact this will have, et cetera, et cetera. And then after that, all of that kind of becomes kind of like this algorithmic result where you have a score. And that score is then basically, you put it, take that and compare it against the other ones, and whatever score is higher. Of course, after doing that, we also, do our gut check. It's a selection process, because sometimes you may be, you may also perform your own bias when you're doing RISE. And like, oh, this is going, the impact of this is going to be XL, right? Everybody wants to have amazing impact. So we do a gut check, of course, after we do the methodology.
Yeah, and this is really down in the weeds. But what software are you using here? Is this just in a spreadsheet, or are you using a kind of backlog management tool, or how do you collaborate?
This is extremely simple, right? We just basically have a sheet where you have per row, you already have the values and the calculation at the end. So once you select your impact, how much money that will potentially result in, etc., then you will have a result.
Nice. And it strikes me as well that sense check you were talking about is very, very important. I'm always talking about, I call it the sniff test. Does it smell the way that you'd expect when you step back and you look at the output of the process? But there is also a data-led element to that. So now you've been running this testing program for a long time. You have a backlog of tests that have been winners and losers and inconclusive. Are you doing any quantifiable objective analysis to say, okay, we think this is a good idea because our content tests on average have been beneficial, or our title tag tests have been winners, or we've never seen a meta description test win, or whatever it might be. Are you doing anything more data driven with the filtering and prioritization?
Well, we consider that data driven, right? Because the impact and everything that I just mentioned comes from somewhere. And so in that case, we're basically using the data from previous experiences or from previous tests to come up with that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I'm curious about the data at both ends of that process. So one of the things that we've thought a lot about is can that database of past tests, can it help either with coming up with test ideas, saying, hey, we think there might be fertile ground over here because we've had a lot of winners in this area, or at the end of the process, the end of the ideation process, where you're doing that, you're kind of validating that prioritization, and you're saying, yes, the reason when you think about making a slide deck to present to leadership about what we're going to test this quarter, you can back up your RICE, the kind of confidence of the impact by saying, we've validated this against our historic experimentation data.
Yeah, correct, and that's exactly that's what I meant. Yes, that's what we do, and that's what the backlog of tests, winning tests, but also tests that haven't performed as expected. That's what it's part of what it's for. It will help us have that or at that level of confidence as well. At the same time, we do have a lot of it's a lot of independence when creating our roadmaps, right? Because we're the experts basically. We really just have to be able to provide the right arguments for it and follow the framework that the organization follows as well, right? So there's established organizations. RISE framework, for example, is extremely important for us. Everybody understands it. Everybody knows. So whenever we have it there, and if someone has questions, then we can provide more background. And that's where the gut check, the sniff test comes into play. That's where also the previous tests and the results come into play. And continue to iterate and never. One of the things that I think we've spoken about this before is as well, even if a test has been successful or not, and just put it in the drawer, forget about it. That's it. Never come back to it. Just continue to check, because we know that search engine optimization is not a very exact science.
Or a one-time thing.
Exactly, or a one-time thing. Exactly, correct. So search engines are constantly improving their algorithms. There's new things happening, as we know, right? So that's part of the ideation process as well. Just going back to older tests that have failed, or continue to be successful, or were successful in the past, and hey, is this still working, or can this work now?
Yep.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And when you talk about the freedom that you have, I think it sounds as though a lot of that is built up over time, not just because you're the experts, but because you have the track record. You've done this, you've reported on it clearly, you've run the program in a very structured, methodological way, you've got the frameworks, you can communicate it, you can explain it. So can you tell me a bit about that history of building up the testing program? So not just running one good test, but over time, what makes up an effective testing program that builds that authority around the organization?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's something that I personally I think we have a really good process in place for that, and it all begins. I'm just give you like a step by step of what we do, what our program is like. We've already been discussing this, but ideation is the first thing that comes into play, and of course, learnings, takeaways, etc. Stuff from other teams we already spoke about, and the selection of the actual test that we want to carry out, basically just going a little bit deeper and using the RISE framework. Then the next thing that becomes extremely important, and because we work with data analysts who will do the more of the statistical work, we need a really good test plan. Right, and a test plan is basically a document where we have all the information that a data analyst needs, and the product team as well, to go ahead with the test. Right, so you need the hypothesis, very clear hypothesis, very concise, as I said. If, then, because, right. Then the type of test that we're going to be carrying out is an A/B test, is a multi-arm bandits, which basically just puts you're kind of testing ideas against each other, and then you have a winner. Then the group balancing is extremely important as well, right? How do we want to balance this? Which KPI are we going to use to balance this? Are we going to be using non-branded clicks? Are we going to be using something else, impressions? That, of course, will depend on your hypothesis. The test duration, do we need to include a buffer period or not? So Google, for example, has a magnificent way of finding out when we're carrying out tests to just launch a major core update. So we need to account for that as well, right? When we think about our test duration, how long is this going to test run for? What are your primary KPIs, right? And again, this is going to be something that you will know from your hypothesis and what you want to test. Say you want to add, this is something we met in New York earlier this year, and one of the tests that you mentioned as being one of the most successful, and we've tested it as well, was adding a top banner or a top above the fold copy before your main content. And in that example, we've tested it as well. This has been very successful. And so in that case, right, we just want to add a very short, say, introductory test. It's great for users because it describes basically the content of the page, but have the content there. It's contextual, right? So in that case, right, what we really are after is to increase keyword coverage, right? So we can, add a couple of synonyms there. So that will probably be your main KPI, right? So keyword coverage, is your main KPI. Impressions will probably also extremely important there. Clicks, it depends, because if you improve your keyword clicks should probably increase as well. If you increase your keyword coverage, it may increase. Maybe not, because if you're starting to rank for some new keywords, then you might be getting the impressions, but probably you're not ranking as high yet.
Sure.
Right, and then of course you have secondary KPIs, say boundary metrics, things you just need to be alert, right, about. In that case, so the example of adding, copy before the main content can that influence the way users are using the main content? Can that influence latency, page experience, right? So all those boundary metrics need to be taken into account, of course. And then, of course, the product needs the exact implementation on the mock-ups. What are we going to be doing? What is it going to look like on page? Potential risks, of course, that we all are alert. And that's basically it. After that, you just need the live dashboards to make sure that everything is going according to plan. You need, and if it's not going according to plan, you, of course, need to be flexible enough to pivot. You can't just be,
right.
Hey, we're, losing, let's say, 20% traffic, and it's clear that the test group is losing 20% traffic. Let's just keep going 45 more days, right? So in that case, you really need to be flexible, and also, hey, what can be causing this? And that happens all the time. And then we iterate, and we found this, etc. So that's also extremely important.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
the one final. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, I just wanted to add something else, but I think it's probably a segue. It gets a segue for reporting to leadership. So that's probably, we can leave it there. Come back to that.
Well,
later.
that was actually exactly what I was going to ask about next. Was I'd love to hear how you take all of this, which is quite detail oriented. Everything you described there is very useful to you and your team, and probably to your manager, but maybe not to SVP level or CMO level. What are you packaging up? How are you reporting on this? To the wider business, to folks outside the SEO specialism, and how do you think about that when it comes to reporting on the program, not just an individual test?
That's right. So let's start individually by test. The test suite is basically the I don't want to call it the most important, but when it comes to reporting to leadership, it is the most important. Let's say
the building
piece
block
of,
yeah.
Right, exactly, right, because that is where you gather all your findings, right, and that is where everything that I just mentioned before, how the test was balanced, how long it took, was there a core update or not, was the buffer period, was the buffer period taken into account, etc. And of course the results, how did the main KPIs, did they move in any way compared to the test group, etc. You really need to pack that in a way that is high level, right? At first, this is the TLDR, this is the executive summary, this is what happened. The main KPIs improved by that much, or they didn't, right? And this is because of this and this and that. This test has been statistically significant because of this and this, or we see directional improvement, etc. And this is why we work also with data analysts on our team, because they're the statistics. Oh Jesus, this word is really hard for me. Statistician. So they basically are the people who can do that, and so that we can present that to not only to leadership, but we share those results periodically with the rest of the organization, right? So we have every time we have a successful test, and sometimes we don't have successful tests, and we also share it so that everybody is on the same page. We just send it to our, let's say, it's like test release email, right, distribution, and that's how we do it, right? And of course, this is communicated to the head of MarTech. The head of MarTech, of course, communicates it to say C-level leadership. And sometimes you'll be surprised to find our test results in mentioned during call to investors, right? And when they report quarterly findings, they say, well, we had this really good results with this title tag as SEO test, which drove this much, and we're planning on so it feels really good.
Yeah, I can imagine, and we've definitely seen that power of those individual tests that almost become memes, right? They're almost like viral internally, where everybody in the organization remembers that one time that we ran that thing and it helped us beat the competition, or it helped us get some particular uplift, or it was a crucial time of year, or it helped us hit the numbers. And those stories are so powerful. And I love that. And that's still building on those building blocks, right? That's still building on what you call the test read, which I love. When you zoom out from the individual tests, and you're in a slightly different situation to when we're doing this, we're obviously an outside vendor. You're an embedded part of the team, but there's something that we come across quite often, which is folks are very interested in those individual test results, but then they do want to ask the question, okay, but how's the year gone? How are we doing year over year? How are we doing compared to last year? And those are very different questions, and they rely on kind of different statistical thinking and so forth. So how have you thought about, do you get asked that question? Do you get asked, how are we doing year over year? And how do you answer it from a testing program standpoint?
Absolutely. Well, before we get to that point, the potential for virality from negative tests is much higher. Right. So when a test completely fails miserably, it's like, oh, that goes viral within the organization. But yeah, absolutely. Yes. So we had semi-quarterly reviews, basically, where we speak about that with leadership, all the tests that have been performed, and then those become quarterly reviews, and then those quarterly reviews become also cycle reviews, right? So that's basically what we do. We report on the tests that have been performing very well, those that didn't, where we had high hopes, and also and to answer your question, the results that those tests will have at the end of the day, right? So those tests will become product releases, right? So a product release will have that much impact on this particular, say, pillar of SEO. And that particular pillar of SEO has that much impact on SEO, and then that has that much impact on the organization, of course. So when it comes to that, sure, we do tie that to, tie our results and our reporting year over year. And also, when we had the COVID period back in the day, say 5 years ago, we also reported over the last 2 years, just to make sure that we were, excluding the extraordinary numbers that we were seeing from COVID. Correct. And so, yeah, that's what we do. We do tie, of course, only when it's valid. We do tie the success of our releases to test and experimentation that we've been doing. It's not all that we do, of course, right? We don't only do testing. It's part of our strategy. We have
Sure.
an experimentation focus. Let's say we try to keep it 20 to 25%, so that we do have to continue, driving growth. So testing will allow us to drive growth in the future, but we need to continue to drive growth right now, and that's probably from past tests.
Right. Yeah. And there's something interesting there. We've spoken about this before, I think, of what you mentioned earlier. Google's always changing. These days, of course, there's actually competition for Google for the first time in decades, it feels like. And but even if we just think about Google, some of those shifts and some of those changes that might not even be algorithmic, they might be more presentational. The way the search layout changes, for example, can have huge impacts on your business. It feels like you've done a very good job of communicating to the business what's coming, what you see, the lessons, the stories that connect together multiple tests and say, look, we're getting these winners across our PDPs, but PDPs are going to become more and more important because Google is showing the PLPs less, for example. Can you talk a little bit about how do you do that storytelling internally?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. That is very it has been very present topic for the last 2 years. How we do that is basically, again, the team, staying curious, staying alert. They basically started seeing, hey, something's happening to PLP traffic. What's going on? Are we doing something wrong? Is someone else doing something wrong? And then we noticed that Google had just basically changed. Of course, they've been changing the SERPs, progressively over the last 15 years, and since, of course, at the beginning. But the bigger changes began to happen, let's say, August 2023, and that was during an algorithm update, I think, when we first noticed it. And then from there, and that's one of the exciting parts of working at Wayfair as well. And when you are certain that something is happening, but yet you have to prove it to everyone else, because that's where you can spend a lot of time doing that. And of course, you have to be mindful of your resources. But then the team does, hey, what's happening? How can I present this in the best way possible? And then also provide the recommendations and the course of action, right? So precisely what you said, we noticed the PLPs were losing traffic, and we needed to understand why, right? So once we saw, hey, blue links are gone, all right? The blue links are no more. And then basically you just had product packs all over the place, which we call organic PLA as well. And then, of course, the product packs are showing, or you have a direct door to your product pages, right?
Yes.
So that's basically your product pack. You see 5, 6, 8 different products, and when you click on them, you'll get more information on that based on your structured data and everything you're providing to the feed, to the PLA feed, by the way. And then from there, the user will click or not on your product and then land on your product page. So that's how we started to notice all of this. And then our recommendation and next course of action was, guys, we need to pay attention. We've always paid attention to them, but this is increasingly becoming more and more important. And that strategy has paid off fantastically, because we've been using, we've been working with OpenAI for quite some time already, for let's say classic SEO things. But nowadays, with the rise of LLM search, search is conversational now, right? You're just using keywords. You're asking your assistant to provide the best results possible, considering all the history you have together, right? And so when you do that, I'm looking for this pair of shoes with this much, that costs this much money. I have this budget. You know me, please, all right? And they won't give you links to the PLP so that you check yourself. Mm-hmm. They'll give you links to your product pages.
Right.
So that's, it's, I used to call it the future-proof lever that you would have, but it's not future anymore. It's happening already. Google is doing it
right now. Yeah,
it's now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Is you talked earlier about the guardrail metrics and the primary metrics and those kinds of considerations. We've been talking a lot about multi-metric analysis, which is related, but is about saying from the very outset of the test design, there's multiple things that we're going to want to measure here. So we're trying to create those balanced buckets of pages, balanced not only on the primary metric, but balanced on the secondary and tertiary metrics as well. And particularly as it comes to product search, one of the things that I think people need to really realize is that impressions are a different kind of thing, because the impression in the merchant center is triggered by the click, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Yes. So you've got the product grid. You click on a product in the grid, you're still on Google, That's counted as an impression, even though what you did was click. And it's only the next step, which is the click through to your website, that shows up as a click in your analytics. Yeah. And so actually we're finding that what they called impression, because it's the first click, that's actually a very powerful lead metric to say this test is likely to end up positive in the future, because it's so much higher volume than the clicks that actually end up coming to your website.
Amazing. That's a great call. Great call. Specifically because when a user makes the decision to click on that result, it may be brand related, right? So maybe that user is clicking on that result, probably because, yes, the product looks amazing, but also Google shares the name of the brand where the product is being hosted, right? So maybe it's brand related. So is your brand awareness good enough that it's allowing users to click on that? Absolutely agree. Yeah.
Okay, we're coming up on time, and thank you very much for the time you've given. Final question I wanted to tie back. It's been bubbling around in my head since you mentioned it. You mentioned right at the very outset that the strength of the team is kind of everything here, which is unsurprising. Quality people doing quality work is at the root of success in all kinds of areas. Some of that is hiring, but as you said, some of it is development and training. So can we just end on, how do you think about training people for this? Is it a mix of formal, informal? Is it structured? Do you deliver it? Is it peer-to-peer? How do you think about training folks to be really good at this?
Well, in that sense, yes, formal and informal, right? We do have our appraisals and our meetings, say quarterly, and that's where we sit down and just talk. It's not like, hey, I'm in this position where and you should learn this and this and that. But hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And I learn a lot as well. We all learn together.
Yep.
And we do that a lot, providing feedback. I think there's a lot of, and I know this is a verb that has been overused over the past 5 to 10 years, but coaching is extremely important, right? When you manage a team, coaching is, I think, among the most important things that you can do, because it's basically just understanding the strengths of your team and trying to just, take advantage of those strengths. And from that, then, the success of the team will follow. So that's basically how we do it. We do, have our what do you call them again? The word escaped me right now. We have our quarterly meetings with our employees, and then they're in our cycle meetings. And then, we discuss all those things. What are the opportunities, etc. And we also have, of course, our own team meetings where we discuss all the testing, etc. And that's basically how we go about it.
I mean, it sounds like a great team. I'm sure that a lot of folks are going to be interested to learn more, to keep up with what your team's doing, maybe even to work with you one day. So as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to hear if there are job openings in the future, or is there anything else that you'd like to have people connect with you on or learn about?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow us on LinkedIn and all the platforms. Follow Wayfair. We're constantly sharing openings, ourselves as well. There's an opening we shared on LinkedIn. So follow us over there, stay alert, and absolutely, I just have to highlight what you just said. I have an amazing team, and really couldn't imagine all of this without them. And they are basically, the core, and basically the reason of the success at Wayfair.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's a team that we've known for many, many years, going back to the Distilled days, and there's always been really smart ideas and really smart folks coming out of that team and going on to do great things all over the industry. So really appreciate you taking the time today, Rodney, and I'm sure the audience will really appreciate all of this deep dive into ideation and test program running. So yeah, thank you for your time, and take care.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Will. Take care. Have a great day.